Intel versus Ryzen. Can the Ryzen 9 3900X beat out the Intel Core i9 10900K? I've run each of these computer builds through 14 plus creator-focused benchmarks covering video editing in Premiere Pro and DaVinci Resolve, motion design, graphic design, photo editing, 3D modeling, and more.
Let's get rockin'!
If you're new to the channel, my name is Benji Kaiser. This is where you're going to find the best tech and tools for creative professionals. Now, before you jump to the comment section to tell me how late I am to the game or how irrelevant this review is, or perhaps you just want to call me a moron, let me explain why I am posting this video right after the launch of Ryzen 9 5900X. Oh, but if you're someone who doesn't need an explanation and wants to get straight to the benchmarks, you can click the timestamps below and jump straight into it. When a new part launches, there is a lot of confusion. Is it better? How much better? Is it worth it? Should I upgrade? Sure, the simulated benchmarks look great, but what about real-life applications? That is why this video was made. Can the 3900X beat out the i9 10900K, making it a healthy alternative and an excellent cost savings? At roughly $100 cheaper than the 5900X, you could simply pocket that money or reinvest it into your build where it would serve you better than a mere 0.2 gigahertz faster clock speed. I'm going to dive into the benchmarks now, and then later in the video, we'll talk about how you could better spend that $100-ish at the end of this video. I have a near identical test bench for each of these setups to ensure no funny business. For the Ryzen 3900X, we have a Be Quiet Pure Base 500DX for the case, a Be Quiet Dark Rock 4 for the cooler, a Ryzen ROG Strix X570E gaming motherboard, a Ryzen 9 3900X with 12 cores and 24 threads, the NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1660 Super with 6 gigs of GDDR6 VRAM, 32 gigs of RAM from Kingston HyperX Fury, a 512 gig NVMe SSD from Kingston, the KC2500, and for the Intel i9 10900K, we have the NZXT H510, the NZXT Kraken X53 AIO, the Asus TUF Gaming Z490 Plus motherboard, the Intel Core i9 10900K with 10 cores and 20 threads, the NVIDIA GTX 1660 Ti with 6 gigs of GDDR6 VRAM, 32 gigs of RAM from Corsair, that's the Dominator Platinum, 512 gigs of NVMe SSD, that's the Kingston KC2500. Now, if you're curious about the exact pricing or availability of any of those products as we're heading through this video, you can head down in the description below and click one of those links. Now, if you do make a purchase with that link, we'll get a small commission, but at no extra cost to you, and that's what keeps this channel alive and the helpful content coming your way. If you want a multi-core beast, then the clear choice is the Ryzen 3900X. On the Geekbench 5 single-core performance, it is close, with the 3900X at 1263 and the 10900K at 1420. But with the 3900X scoring a 11,544 and the 10900K scoring a 9,805 on the multi-core Geekbench 5 score. So the clear winner in this category is the 3900X. When considering the insane multi-core performance of the 3900X, remember that this only matters if you are in fact running multiple programs at the same time, or running programs that highly benefit from multi-core processors. Use cases such as gaming barely take advantage of multi-core performance, and something like Premiere Pro does not even benefit all that much from it as well. The 10900K closes the gap on the Cinebench R20 scores with a 6,378 versus the Ryzen 3900X scoring a 7,016. Regarding Cinebench, either CPU would make a great choice. Now let's dive into the Puget Systems Photoshop benchmark. I use this benchmark to see how well a computer will be able to handle Adobe's design suite by testing it in the most system-intensive software in the suite, Photoshop. Starting off with the Ryzen 3900X, it scored an 856, a very respectable score, meaning that this computer will cut through any Photoshop task like a fine-made bench-made knife. But the 3900X better watch out because the 10900K topped its score by almost 100 points, scoring a 937. For graphic design, these builds will dominate. You will experience smooth workflows in Photoshop, InDesign, Illustrator, and other graphic design programs like Sketch, the Affinity Suite, and Figma. Regarding motion design, I'm also using the Puget System After Effects and After Effects render benchmarks to test these computers. On the standard After Effects test, we can see the Ryzen 3900X picking up a 925 and the Intel i9-10900K coming in with a 981. Great scores for both builds, with the 10900K pulling slightly ahead. The 10900K and the Ryzen 3900X stay neck and neck for the After Effects render test, with the Ryzen 3900X scoring a 527 and the 10900K with a 541. Let's take a look at some 3D modeling benchmarks to see how well these two stack up against each other. In Autodesk 3ds Max, the 3900X scored a 136.75 and the 10900K scored a 156.63. In Autodesk Maya, the 3900X scored a 204.38 and the 10900K scored a 214.91. In PTC Creo, the 3900X scored a 134.37 and the 10900K scored a 139.11. In SolidWorks, the 3900X scored a 76.06 and the 10900K scored a 81.64. So we're seeing in 3D modeling that the 10900K pulls slightly ahead in most benchmarks. So if you're going to be heavy 3D modeling, the i9-10900K is going to be the pick for you. Now on to the main event, video editing. First, I'm going to start off with a playback test. For this test, I'm going to use a 9-minute 4K clip, adding some motion graphics and then playing it back in the timeline at full quality. This clip contains 16,177 frames in total, with 7,240 of those frames being motion graphics. The 3900X can play full quality 4K footage in the Premiere Pro timeline with only 35 drop frames thanks to its GTX 1660 Super. During the 4K playback with the 10900K, I saw 0 drop frames. Both CPUs handle half quality and fourth quality playback with 0 drop frames as well. You might see some more drop frames at full quality while multitasking, but you can easily switch to half or fourth quality to continue to get smooth playback in the timeline. To render out the 7,240 motion design frames took the 10900K 2 minutes and 52 seconds and the Ryzen 3900X 3 minutes and 39 seconds. Moving on to the 4K test, I'm going to take a 9-minute 4K clip, place it into Premiere Pro and DaVinci Resolve, then export both out at 1080p and 4K YouTube settings. Now remember, for DaVinci Resolve, we're using the free version of Resolve. The 10900K did the 4K to 4K export out of Premiere Pro in 3 minutes and 27 seconds, whereas the 3900X was able to beat that score slightly, 4K to 4K export at 3 minutes and 4 seconds. The 10900K was able to do the 4K to 1080p export out of Premiere Pro in 3 minutes and 40 seconds, and the 3900X was able to do that same export in 2 minutes and 57 seconds. The 10900K was doing the DaVinci Resolve 4K to 4K export in 5 minutes and 11 seconds, and the 3900X did that same export in 4 minutes and 39 seconds. The 10900K did the DaVinci Resolve 4K to 1080p export in 2 minutes and 58 seconds, and the 3900X did the 4K to 1080p out of DaVinci Resolve in 2 minutes and 23 seconds. Lastly, I know many of you want to know, how are the thermals and noise during the 4K export? The 3900X comes quite a bit cooler at 48 degrees Celsius versus the 10900K at 58 degrees Celsius. And for the full thermal temps in main applications, here are the thermal temps for each setup. Now regarding noise, the 10900K was a little bit noisier. It came in at around 48 decibels during the 4K export, whereas the 3900X inside of the Be Quiet case came in at about 42 decibels. Now, think about that in different cases, different applications, so take that for what it is. If you want a quieter case, I'd recommend the Be Quiet. If you want a more affordable case, the NZXT is going to be the way to go. If you're looking for a CPU with excellent export times out of Premiere Pro, killer 3D modeling benchmarks, and the best Photoshop score I have seen on my channel, then you will want to consider the Intel Core i9-10900K. But if you're looking for a slightly more affordable CPU with even better export times out of Premiere Pro and DaVinci Resolve and same multi-core performance while running cooler than the Intel CPU, then you will want to consider the Ryzen 3900X. And if you do consider the Ryzen 3900X over, say, the Ryzen 9 5900X, I would reinvest that $100-ish to upgrade to maybe an RTX 2060 to get yourself smoother playback in the timeline of either DaVinci Resolve or Premiere Pro. So that's how I'd recommend spending that extra $100. Remember, affiliate links in the description below if you're curious about the exact availability or pricing of any of these products, components, you can check those out. I will get a small commission, but at no extra cost to you, and that's what keeps this channel alive and the helpful content coming your way. If you want more content about the Ryzen 3900X or the 10900K, you can click or tap the screen over here. Otherwise, keep editing, keep designing, keep creating. My name is Benji Kaiser, and I'll see you here in the next video.